Hello and welcome to another workshop. This one today is interventions for dyspraxia. My name is Andrew Whitehouse, and if you want to be in touch with me, you can email me on andrew@peoplefirsteducation.com. You can contact me on LinkedIn, which is Andrew Whitehouse, and I've put a few letters after my name. Twitter @AndrewWSEN, Instagram @AndrewWSEN, and you can also get me on Facebook, which is People First Education. Just to put you in the picture of who I am a TEDx speaker. I delivered a TEDx from disability to superpowers. You can access that on YouTube, and you can also access it on TED.com. I'm a Bamford lecturer for the British Academy of Audiology, where I delivered creating autism-friendly audiology clinics, and I'm a hearing ambassador. I'm a forensic special educational needs and disability consultant, which means I supply expert witness work to the courts in cases revolving around special educational needs and disability. I'm a short course provider at Bishop Grosseteste University and the University of Lincoln, but actually most of my work revolves around training, consultations and observations, and I'm very much a boots on the ground involved trainer. So most of the work that you'll get from me today is based on things that I've seen in and around when I've been out and about doing the work that I do. So, first of all, what is dyspraxia? I'd love to be able to have you all calling out and saying it's this, it's that, it's the other, but we don't have that luxury today. But just to have a little think to yourself, you've come along, you've logged on to this, you've clearly got an interest. What is it? What is dyspraxia? Well, the good news is I can help you with this. One of the things about dyspraxia, there are many myths and misconceptions around dyspraxia, so I'm going to talk you through what's real and what isn't. Dyspraxia is a form of developmental coordination disorder, or DCD. Now, the best comparison I can give you is autistic spectrum disorder, ASD. They will say about a person with autism, they have autism. Autism is a type of autistic spectrum disorder. But they might also say that that person has got autistic spectrum disorder. So although dyspraxia falls under the heading of lots of different developmental coordination disorders, lots of different DCDs, sometimes you might hear a dyspraxic person described as having DCD. So I hope that tidies it up for you. A little bit later on, I'm going to talk you through some other names that dyspraxia does get called. So, dyspraxia is a type of DCD, rather like autism is a type of ASD. Okay. Let's have a few facts about dyspraxia. About 6 children in 100 have some kind of dyspraxia. So, varying times throughout this workshop, I will say things like, in a class of about 30, you'll probably have maybe 1 to 3 pupils with dyspraxia. Another name for dyspraxia is DCD. As you know, there is no clear known cause of dyspraxia. Dyspraxia is a neurological disorder, a neurological condition, a neurological diversity, and it is not caused by anything such as a bump on the head or an illness or adverse reactions to medications, etc. We don't have any evidence to say that. It just is a developmental disorder. People with dyspraxia struggle with physical activities, coordination, getting dressed, doing sport, using scissors, any kind of physical activity like that is the sort of thing, anything that requires motor function. Some people with dyspraxia struggle with speaking and listening. We're not going to cover that one so much today, but what we're talking about there is verbal dyspraxia, and Verbal dyspraxia, some people with verbal dyspraxia describe it as their tongue feels too big for their mouth, so it's not hitting the right areas of the mouth to make the sounds. And the one we're talking about today is actually more commonly known as motor dyspraxia. So if you think about it, you've got DCD, comes down to dyspraxia, and then we're hitting motor dyspraxia. Motor dyspraxia is the most common form of dyspraxia. It's 80% boys, but if we had a room with 100 people with dyspraxia in that room, 20 of those people would be girls. So don't overlook the fact that girls can have dyspraxia. And so in a primary class, 28 children, there's likely to be one person with dyspraxia, possibly as many as 3, and it will probably almost certainly be a boy. But again, don't overlook the girls. Okay. How is it defined? Right, well, this is not a diagnostic, but this is just to help you along your way. Impaired development of motor coordination that cannot be explained by cerebral delay or physical disorder. Okay, it must impair learning or life. Impairment, very key word, impairment, because when we say impairment, what we mean that it is getting in the way of people's daily function. It's making life difficult on a daily basis. So you may hear people say, quite a lot, people say, autism, we're all a bit autistic. Yeah, and actually that's not true. We're not all a bit autistic, but we all have little elements of those autistic traits. I'm a bit dyspraxic, somebody might say, if they're not very good at catching and throwing and stuff like that. It's not accurate. Dyspraxia must impair learning or life. Okay. A few of the characteristics you might like to know about: difficulties with gross motor skills being the big actions you do, big actions like getting dressed, big actions like moving large items, big actions like catching a ball, big actions like climbing a tree, but it's also fine motor skills. Now, when we talk about fine motor skills, that might be sewing on a button, that might be doing up the buttons on your shirt, it might be writing with a pen, it could be any of those things. So it's possible that a person with dyspraxia, an individual with dyspraxia, can have difficulties with both of those things, but it's also possible that they might only have them with one, or they might have both with different degrees, so struggle more with fine or struggle more with gross. It can affect memory, it can affect perception being I want to pick that cup up, where is the cup, and it's slightly off center to where you think it might be, and it often affects math skills. Quite often this is a difficulty due to the handling of concrete resources. It might be difficult to use concrete resources, although I do fully recommend concrete resources for maths, and a bit later I'm going to say to you that we might want to use slightly larger, more manageable concrete resources in maths. But what we do want to say is, most definitely, these impairments vary from person to person, and by degree from person to person as well. Okay. Developmental dyspraxia is an impairment or immaturity of the organisation of movement. So it might well be that you are that a person is slightly behind. I always think a good figure to play with is about 30%. That's not a strict percentage. It's just something. It's a resource. And so if you think to yourself, okay, a 6-year-old might have the developmental in organisation of a 4-year-old, or a 12-year-old of an 8-year-old, etc. And that helps you. It also helps you with taken into consideration how this gap widens as they get older. It's an immaturity of the way the brain processes information. So what happens is impulses don't get transmitted properly. The messages, I can hear my biology teacher cursing me now, my former biology teacher, but the messages or impulses are not being transmitted properly. So the impulse from the brain that says pick up that cup is not getting to me. So that's where the problem is. It is associated with perception, language and thought. We do say actually that it could be up to 10% of the population. Most of those people you wouldn't spot. Most of those people get through life and would never even know. They just a little bit, they might find some activities a little bit awkward and a little bit difficult. It often runs in families. And there may be an overlap with related conditions. So let's talk about the related conditions, comorbidity, as we call it in my world. The closest relative of dyspraxia, I would say, in my professional opinion, is ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, or attention deficit hyperactive impulsivity disorder. It's very, very a very, very similar condition, and many of those many people with ADHD have motor disorders, and we think it's about 40% of people with ADHD have got motor disorders, and that could include dyspraxia. We also do say in education, one of the old sayings is, look at the parents. If you've got a child with difficulties, it's often a good idea to look at the parents and speak to the parents and find out if they've got any similar difficulties or indeed did have at school. So quite a lot to be thinking about there. In fact, in most conditions, I would suggest that there probably are overlaps with other conditions. Okay, so in my case, I have ADHD. I've also got auditory processing disorder. So we've got our class of 30. We've got our 1 to possibly 3 children in that class with dyspraxia. Excuse me. And the the proportion is 4 boys to 1 girl. And I think when you actually see that demonstrated, that's quite a lot. It's quite a lot. But again, don't forget the girls. And I'm also adding that its closest relative, ADHD, will also be 4 boys to 1 girl. So I promised you some other names for dyspraxia that we've used over the years. So we do call people with dyspraxia DCD, although that is inaccurate. It is a type of DCD, but we do use it, developmental coordination disorder. Perceptual and Motor dysfunction. It's quite a good one, really, because that it explains exactly what's going on. Motor learning difficulties, and it used to be known as minimal brain damage and even clumsy child syndrome. You might find that quite shocking, clumsy child syndrome, but in actual fact, I have come across this in quite recent American texts. So it is a term that I have that is possibly still in use, although I would say probably not in the United Kingdom. It's not one that I've ever heard used in the UK, not for many, many years anyway. Okay, dyspraxia is generally recognised to be an impairment of or immaturity of the organisation of movement, and it's when we associate this, we associate it with language, perception, and thought processes. It is not poor motor skills impairing performance. There is nothing wrong with the hands. There is nothing wrong with the arms or the legs or anything like that. And it is a motor programming problem. The difficulties in dyspraxia come from the brain to the movements, and it's all the difficulties start in the brain. So it is also not a muscular weakness. Okay. And so it's worth keeping that in mind. In fact, you have to keep that in mind, because if you don't understand that, you can't help the person with dyspraxia. With dyspraxia, you are helping the brain, not the muscles. And actually, we can use the muscles to help the brain. So by lots and lots of practice at doing physical activities, you will find, and I'm going to be showing you some of those a little bit later on, you will find that you get better at this. And you might think of it as a muscular workout, but actually it's working on your head muscle. It's working on your brain, neuroplasticity, changing the function and the structure of that brain. So motor dyspraxia is difficulty planning, sequencing and then executing the correct movement to perform age-appropriate skills in a smooth and coordinated manner at will or on command. Okay. Children with motor dyspraxia have problems with maybe learning a new skill, coordinated movements, handwriting, being consistent in their performance, so they can do it one day but they need to be able to do it the next and possibly can't. Age-appropriate skills, I talked about that 30% behind. Take that as loosely as it's intended. But if you were to get your child development books like Sheridan, Birth to 5 and things like that, what you will find is in those that these children are not hitting those milestones. They might find it difficulty generalizing learned skills, so they might be able to put a can of paint on a high shelf, but they may then go somewhere else and might not be able to take a jar of coffee off a high shelf. So generalizing learned skills and timing and rhythm can also be a problem. Okay. Okay, I pressed that and nothing happened. There it is. Okay, so enough from me. I think you deserve a 3-minute break. So I've got this video here. It's on YouTube, and it's about what is dyspraxia. It's an animated video. It's only 3 minutes long, but I think it describes it extremely well. It means you get a little break from me, a little bit of a directed task. So I hope you enjoy the film. If you press pause now, you should be able to link this through your PDF document that I will have sent out with this. If you haven't had the PDF document, get in touch with whoever sent it to you, or get in touch with me and I will send you the link to the video. So please, what is dyspraxia? A 3-minute video. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so you will have worked out from the video that, and from what we've been talking about, that it is an impaired ability to conceptualize, actually put things in a concept, organize, direct, purposeful movement. Shall I make that a bit easier for you? There's a nicer way of putting this. What happens in dyspraxia? It is imaging, planning, execution. What am I going to do? How am I going to do it? And actually physically doing it. Imaging, planning, execution. Let's take that a stage further. Let's look at something like kicking a ball. When we kick a ball, we have a number of cognitive and perceptual motor processes going on at the same time, and there's quite a lot to think about there. So what I'd like you to do is, again, another little activity. We'll stop for a moment, think about what you need to do to kick a ball. Thank you. Welcome back. Okay, so what you need to know is the aim of the task. What am I trying to do? You know, and actually, with kicking a ball, you're not actually trying to make contact with the ball as such. You're trying to make the ball go to another place. So the aim of the task is to make the ball go to another place. Hopefully, if you're better than me, go in the goal, between the goal posts. So what movements are required? You have to think about what physical movements are required to do that. form a mental image in your mind of what those movements look like. Make a plan. How am I going to do that? In what order? Act upon that plan. Take your position. Plan your balance. Here's the thing about kicking a ball. Have a look at this. One leg is going to be off the ground. So in actual fact, when you are kicking a ball, you've got to get some pretty good balancing skills in there. Which muscles need to be activated and what action needs to be taken. And I've called that the wow moment because we don't really think about it, but there's a heck of a lot of stuff that needs doing just to kick a ball. We have to respond quickly. We have to organize our space. We have to be problem solving. We need to use appropriate skills, cue skills. So for example, the appropriate cue might be the ball might not be there right in front of you. It might be traveling to you from another player. And so we need to have the cue of when do we have to make that action, analysing what is needed, preparing for the next stage. Once you've kicked that ball, yeah, you're not going to stay with one leg in the air, standing on one leg. No, you've got the next stage in the task, which might be running after that ball. And then you have to have that performance as well. So not just the action of kicking the ball and all those stages involved, but what happens next. Once I've kicked the ball, what happens next? So just to remind you again, imaging, planning, execution. I want you to think about that. Imaging, planning, execution. That's the way dyspraxia works. And that works in absolutely everything. Getting changed, putting your shoes on, opening a door, anything like that. Imaging, planning, execution. And of course, what you've got there is, by its very nature, it's slowed down a little bit. Things take a little bit longer because you've got imaging, planning, execution. Okay. Let's have an activity. Right. This is another video which I've sent to you, which I've given you the link. I think you might be quite surprised by that. When I run my day courses, I've used this video quite a lot, and I put this film on, and people look at the children in this video, and they're quite surprised that this is dyspraxia. It looks very, very different, and I've had people say it looks a little bit more like cerebral palsy or multiple sclerosis or things like that. But in actual fact, this is severe dyspraxia. I want you to enjoy this film. I want you to take the information from it, and most importantly, be aware to yourself that there are different types of motor dyspraxia, and this is a very severe case of it. Hope you enjoy it. I'll see you in a few moments. Welcome back. Okay. Right, so obviously the formatting has done something to me, but that's okay. I can happily work around this. Where is the cat? Okay. Problems in school is late in reaching milestones, e.g. rolling over, sitting, standing, walking and speaking. May not be able to run, hop, catch, kick a ball, etc. like that. And we're getting to the where is the cat. I'm going to sing for you now. Na 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 na. Da 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 da. To the left, to the right. I don't know how that thing goes, but it's used a lot in schools. It's some rap thing, dance thing, I don't know. Anyway, but these are children who have little understanding of in, on, inside, outside, beneath, above. And if you're familiar with the song that I'm talking about, you'll be aware that there are children with dyspraxia, and they get involved in that activity, and they're all over the place. Where is the cat? Is it in the box, outside the box, underneath the box? The cat. They might have difficulty walking up and down stairs. They might be poor at dressing. There's one of our most famous dyspraxic advocates is Daniel Radcliffe of Harry Potter fame. There's a really great piece of film. I think it's in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, and he's on a beach and he's getting changed. Am I right there? I think so. And I'm astounded that they left it in the film because he really, really is struggling with that. He really he's all over the place trying to get his arms in and out of this jumper. Good example. Slow and hesitant in most actions, appears not to be able to learn anything instinctively, but has to be taught. And particularly with those physical things. Falling over, poor pencil grip. I'm going to talk about pencil grip in a bit. I've got some fabulous toys with me today to help you with that. Can't do jigsaws, can't do shape sorting games. Artwork can be very immature, and they're often anxious and easily distracted. The link there with the ADHD. The anxiety, of course, comes from that ongoing difficulty to do those acts that they want to carry out. They'll probably have all the difficulties experienced as the preschool child with dyspraxia, with little or no improvement. They will struggle, except for as they get older, they'll start avoidance strategies. So they'll avoid things like PE and games. Why will they avoid them? Because they're so damaging to their self-esteem. They'll, and who wants to do things that are damaging to your self-esteem? A little bit later, we're going to look at alternative PE actions. I myself am not dyspraxic, but at school I was very poor at sport. But I was very poor at team games, so I wasn't really good at team games. I also wasn't really very good at anything that involved a ball, a bat, a racket, anything like that. I just didn't have that physical coordination. However, so I went through school life thinking that I was rubbish at sport. However, I left school and I discovered that things that involved just one person, I was actually quite good at. I was quite a good runner. I picked up swimming a little bit later on, but I was quite a good swimmer and did regular swim marathons. And I also even got involved with karate, and I really enjoyed that. Now, I want to go back to the swimming, because this is all about strategy as well. When you can't swim as a child, people assume you're scared of the water. I couldn't swim as a child, and but I most definitely wasn't scared of the water. I loved the water. They start you swimming with doggy paddle, front crawl, that sort of thing. I could never do that. In my mid-40s, I learned to swim, and the instructor picked up on that and said, Andrew, you're really struggling with front crawl. Let's try breaststroke. Maybe that's the one for you. And it was, and I was swimming within that lesson. And so, and actually, the week after I did my first width of a pool, not length of a pool, my first width, I did a swim marathon. And so all that needed to help me with those sports is different strategy. We're going to look at different strategy later. Does badly in class, but significantly better in a one-to-one. Let's face it, most young people do. One-to-one learning really does work well for most young people. Reacts to all stimuli, without discrimination. They don't discriminate between different things that are happening. That means it's very difficult to focus on the task that you're supposed to be focusing on, and your attention span is therefore quite poor. All right. Trouble with maths, trouble with writing structured stories. I'm going to talk about that. Obviously, part of that is attention span. We don't really associate dyspraxia with short-term memory problems, although it can have, but certainly having a short attention span can cause difficulties. I'm going to talk a little bit about writing structured stories a little bit later. Writing laboriously and immaturely, taking a long time. Right, so you're taking a long time to write, and it's difficult, and your thought process of going into that, you do that, and then what happens next is you're in a position where you're going, I've forgotten what I was going to be writing. It's not actually a short-term memory problem. It's caused by the fact that your mind is on something else, and we would call that single attention, as well as just tiredness. And that single attention, being able to focus on one thing. I focused on the writing, I've forgotten about what I'm writing about. Unable to remember or follow multi-step instructions. Again, that will have a knock-on effect with maths, and generally poorly organised. So those are a few things again in school that you might find difficulties with. So one of the things we do recommend is using a laptop or a keyboard. Child here says I use my laptop in school because it's faster for me than writing by hand. Yeah, we have had quite good success with learning to touch type for young people with dyspraxia. It's all about patterns, it's all about shapes, and so that's quite a good strategy for people with young people with dyspraxia. The other thing that we have had good success is speech to text, text to speech. So talking into the laptop to be able to get that information into there. And so obviously by its very nature, speaking is faster, and therefore you're getting the information out there much more quickly, and therefore you cut out that issue, or certainly help with that issue of forgetting things. Design technology can be difficult. Spatial organisation caused problems with three-dimensional thought processes. This is unlike dyslexia, and this is hugely important at this point to get this across. People do associate dyspraxia and dyslexia, and this is purely because of those first three letters: dys, the disability, the inability to do something. Dyspraxia, dys, and praxia is acting, moving, doing. Okay, so it's difficulty with acting, moving, doing. Dyslexia is difficulty with words. They're not the same thing. And what we do find is that people with dyslexia are very, very good at perception and holistic visualization. In fact, I even have a paper that I deliver called Dyslexia and Holistic Visualization. I have found in my experience, can you believe, I was once booked to deliver a dyslexia workshop to a room full of about 200 architectural students. So you can imagine, you know, architects need to have that holistic visualization, and so that spatial organization problem that we find in dyspraxia is not present in dyslexia. Slow to pick up social cues or unwritten rules of groups or teacher. Stress can increase emotional responses such as fears, emotional outbursts, and obsessions. I don't know if Gwyneth Paltrow's got dyspraxia, but what I do know is that I saw that Oscar performance that she gave, or that award performance that she gave. If you can remember that, it was completely disproportionately emotional to the event. I mean, maybe I'm undermining those movie events, but you know, what I did think was, my goodness, I'm going to keep that picture. I'm going to use that in my dyspraxia training, because that is a really helpful example. And I remembered her name. Last time I delivered this, I'd forgotten her name. It was driving me crazy. And you're not in a position to Google anything when you're doing a job like this. So, helping a distracted learner, a dyspraxic learner that's distracted. Key factors: positioning. Where are you going to sit them? Yeah, I'll go into more of that as we go on. But obviously, you're going to keep them away from windows, doors, hyperactive children, etc. Are you addressing their visual needs to help them along? You know, it's quite amazing the amount of times I see in a classroom a teacher describing something and those children not engaged because there's no picture of it. We're in the world of Google. We can get pictures of anything. Are we meeting their auditory needs? Are we looking at their posture? I've got a fantastic diagram coming on about posture and how to check if posture is correct. Body awareness. And finally there, are they demotivated? You can't help the distracted learner if they're demotivated. And often the demotivation comes from the task being either too difficult or too easy. Now, there are a lot of children who will benefit from a task being easy for self-esteem, etc. And we do have children that when we set a very difficult task, some of those more gifted, talented or able students, they will engage with the more difficult tasks. But in general, you know, we want to be thinking about Freud here. Freud said that good learning should be switching on a light switch that you should just stand on tiptoes. So that's where the task level should be. So difficulties getting changed. These now, I was online and I think Twinkle do some flashcards. I think it's Twinkle. There'll be loads of stuff out there on how to get changed for PE. Some of the things you might want to use are have a chair to put their clothes or a bench to put their clothes, and even better than that, you might want to use a tray or a box to keep them in, or if we have the luxury of a locker, something like that. All of those things are very, very helpful. Somewhere to put things. You could have a visual timetable, what to take off in what order, what to put on in what order. I used to do that when I was a teacher, and you know, it was very, very helpful. I would put it on the interactive whiteboard, and the children could see what needed to happen in what order, and they could do that. And then finally on top, they would put their shoes. In their shoes would be their socks, so that we don't lose them. And if they were swimming, in one shoe would be socks, in other shoe would be underpants. But we would do that sort of stuff. So very, very helpful that to sort of get a routine and a visual routine there. When we're writing, we want paper with wider lines, because the handwritten text tends to be large. Angled books, angled books. So I'm going to show you as we go along a rack that we can put books in. You can also use a lever arch file. Get things printed out instead of copying from the board. We want larger maths resources, and we want to declutter so we don't knock things over. And I've just realized where my image is. It is on the screen, but it's so white on a white screen you can't actually see it. But you know, just a little kind of like a lectern type thing that sits on a table, a plastic thing that you can put a book in to make it easier to read. The other one that's quite good as well is those trays, those lap trays that we have for eating our lunch, that have got padding at the bottom, so you can. I mean, I've got a lap tray of sorts here. I'm dropping everything. But you can arrange them so as it tilts upwards. Some more hot blue tack action. Sticking down rulers is a good one. Sloping board, as I've just showed you. Beanie tray, that's what I was trying to think of. Lever arch, wedge cushions to sit on, but also wedge cushions to have on your desk. So, you know, that can be very, very effective to use those for different things. I always, when we're delivering the courses, when the people are in the room, I love it, those moments when people go, oh God, what a good idea. And I just hope that some people have just done that with the wedge cushions. Consider the learner's needs, not the condition. Okay, if you read a book about dyspraxia and it tells you dyspraxia is this and is that and is this and is that, and you go into a classroom and you observe that child and they're not doing any of those things, you know, people still try to address what they think they're supposed to see. There used to be a TV show called, oh gosh, Say What You See. No, Catchphrase. Used to be called Catchphrase, and the guy used to say what you see, and I say, work with what you see. If you've got a dyspraxic child that's presenting with absolutely no of this dyspraxic presentations that you're aware of, and they're presenting with other things, work with those, or the causes of those. You know, that just makes common sense, but you'd be surprised how much that doesn't happen. Think twice before asking a child to read aloud. Give them time to prepare and practice. In my dyscalculia training, I often ask people, these are adults, these are teachers, often maths teachers, to come and demonstrate something on the board, and they get all nervous about it. You know, these are professionals who are doing this stuff every day, but all of a sudden they're in front of their peers, and quite often they'll go, I can't remember what I did. You know, put that, if the adults are having those problems, think about the child. and put that into a child's perspective. Get the seating right. Can he or she see? Are they sitting behind a very tall child or a child with big hair? Are there obstacles in the way? You know, and I do go into classes and sit right down in their chair and see, you know, or kneel down to see what they can see at their level. Avoid busy thoroughfares and be away from distractions. So, as promised, I was going to talk to you about desk and chair. So, there's the 90-degree rule, and the 90-degree rule means that your feet should be at 90 degrees. If you can see this boy's feet, your knees should be at 90 degrees and your waist should be at 90 degrees. And if you've got that right, you should be comfortable. So they should be able to rest their arm. The back of the chair should provide appropriate support. Feet should be on the floor. So 90, 90, 90, 3 90-degree angles. Sometimes you're slightly out with that. We can use foot rests. One idea I was given, absolutely brilliant, an upturned tray, you know, that you can put under their feet. That's quite helpful with that. And also you can use cushions as well. But whilst we're on the subject of sitting down, please no sitting on the floor for a long period of time. I found sitting on the carpet to listen to stories really hard. We want to, you know, it's a differentiation thing, isn't it? We want to give those children the opportunity to sit and be comfortable. They want to enjoy that story. And if that means sitting on a chair whilst all the other children are sitting on the floor, so be it. I'm a big fan of the U-shaped classroom. U-shaped classroom, we have, for distraction purposes, we have a maximum of 1 or 2 people they're going to be sitting next to. Whereas in a group situation, you might have 6 children around a table, 4 children around a table. You can't see their feet, you don't know what they're up to, and so it can be a behaviour problem. But more importantly for the dyspraxic learner, it can be a distraction problem. And so, you know, remember these tables are not bolted to the floor. When I deliver my social story courses, I'm in a conference centre somewhere, what I tend to do is I will have a U-shape in the morning for the theoretical side, and then I'll put, whilst everyone's having their lunch, I'll be moving the tables around into groups. These things are not nailed to the floor in most cases anyway, and so using that U-shape when you can allows discussion, permitting independent work. So give it a go. Absolutely right. Keep that child as close to you as possible without it looking like it's being punitive. Minimize distractions. Seat them away from hallways and windows. Oh look, a chicken. You know, we don't want that. You've ever tried to teach when there's a when there's a cat in the playground? You know, it's just impossible. Something here actually. I was delivering a workshop in the Chaucer Centre in Sutton, and there was a rather scraggy looking fox outside in the field, and that was it. The teaching and learning went out the window, and the adults that I was working with couldn't get away from the fox. They were all watching the fox. That was it. Keep an area of the room away from visual and auditory distractions, and keep an area of the room away from bright or loud or distracting objects if you can. A little piece of sanctuary where you can go and get out of the way. Please use visual timetables. You know I'm a fan of visual timetables. They cover so many bases. Please, please do. We've mentioned them once already today when we were talking about changing for PE, but please use them in a range of other settings as well. Remember what I said about the single attention, the difficulty combining the thoughts with the physical act of writing. It can be quite tricky, and again, one can cause you to forget the other. So, you know, try to work with writing notes, try to work with voice recorders, that sort of thing, if you possibly can. There may be poor organisation of ideas, so extra concentration is required for the writing process, and whilst they're doing that, they might lose the thread of everything else they're doing. So, and their mind might be on other things. Reading and writing, sticking paper to the desk with blue tack is a really helpful one, because if you're a bit gross motor, you might be moving stuff. Chunky moulded pens and pencils and triangular pencil, let him or her choose. Let's have some fun here. So I'm going to put my board down and I'm going to pick this up. And this is a box of pencil toppers and that sort of thing. It's called, the box is called Get a Gripped, a great grip selection from specialdirect.com. Okay, so this is because people get in touch and say, where did you get that? So I'm going to just check with our producer here. Can we see that on the screen?
Yeah.
That's good. Okay, so in here we've got a variety of different shaped pencil grips, pen grips. This is a nice one. That's a triangular one. It feels really lovely in my hand, actually. Triangular one's very, very popular. And also triangular pencils, which I've put one in here. This didn't come with this set. I've pimped it up, as they say, as my kids would say, customized it. It's a triangular pencil. We've got a triangular pen here. And it's got little bits to put your... I can't work out how to work this one. It's worth saying, that's it. You put your thumb and forefinger into the little bits at the front there. So all sorts, quite big ones here that you would put on your pencil, and that's really good for gripping hold of. That's a really large one. There's a whole load of things in here. That one there is quite a nice one. It's quite bobbly, quite sensory. So all those sorts of things. That's a set called Get a Grip. I'm sure lots of people make things like this, but that's a big one. No, sorry, put them away, Whitehouse. Stop playing with your toys. Okay. And that then again has a knock-on effect to what some schools call a pen policy. And the pen policy is that, you know, you earn a pen. I've seen, you know, that you get pen license, and I've seen it called license to quill in one place, which I thought was rather good. But of course the problem is there's that, you know, the schools tend to use maybe those Beryl handwriting pens, which I quite like. I know people don't like them. Beryl handwriting pens. But actually for the dyspraxic child, it might be better if they bring their own pen in from home. Here's a thought while I'm sitting here as well. Okay. If a child brings a pen in from home, they maybe have a Toy Story pen or something like that. Then, you know, they're bringing it in with a plan to write with that pen. And if you say to that child, oh, no, we don't use those here, we use demotivation, instant demotivation. And I can remember our producer here, our director and editor here, took his Toy Story pen into school when he was very little, and his teacher wouldn't let him use it. And he was, what I can say, can you remember that?
I actually can't.
You can't remember that. He was pretty darn demotivated about it. So, you know, think about it. And think about the size, shape, even the colour. I'm getting my box back up here again, look. Because the colours are so pleasing. And if we took one of these triangular ones, they come in red and blue. I bet they had more in there when I first got this as well. And when we get these ones with the grooves on them, I've got a blue one and I've got a yellow one. So quite exciting stuff to be looking at. Get a grip. Okay. Getting my lap tray back. Who's having fun? I'm having fun. Right. Problems with phonics reading. Yes, I'm a big fan of phonics, but phonics is only one approach to reading. And I would say that it's very helpful for people with dyspraxia to have things labelled, that whole word approach. So get your high frequency words, get out there and label everything. I was once in a secondary school in Oxford, and what was interesting about that place was that they had everything labelled in there, you know, and you don't normally see that in a secondary school. And I said to the head teacher, I said, how'd you get away with this? He said, we've always done it. We've just always done it. And it was things like piano was labelled and computer was labelled, and I think that's a great approach. and I think it's a really effective learning strategy. Color code everything, very helpful. So if you're dealing with one particular subject, you might have everything in that subject being attributed to a color. So it might be books, timetables, punch pockets, rooms, resource trays. They may all be labeled in red or yellow, as it used to be for English, blue as it is for maths. I wonder if those are the same colors now. On the subject of punch pockets, I like to use these for a variety of reasons. I will be discussing these for something else in dyslexia workshop, but here in the dyspraxia workshop, it's great for organizing stuff. I might want to put all my maths in blue folders, etc. And there's other things there. You get those. I get mine on Amazon. I think they're about £4 for 50, and they look exactly like that, with all the different colours in there. Those, in fact, those are the colours I get. Also, these punch pockets, they're not quite punch pockets, just like a wallet that you open out. Very, very useful. You can store things in, and it's colour coded. It just helps with organisation skills, and I'm all for that. Just a few strategies for homework. It is quite common for people with dyspraxia not to bring their homework in. If you heard that noise there, by the way, that was me pushing the plunger in on my coffee. I've got this fantastic coffee mug that takes for hours to cool down. So it's good. It keeps your coffee hot, but maybe too hot. Homework isn't handed in. By the way, something there, my dog ate the homework. I literally had a client this week who said her dog had eaten her paperwork that I'd given to her. First time in all my working life, someone that had the dog ate their homework. So why isn't the homework handed in? Well, it can be a variety of reasons. Possibly the messages don't reach home, lost bits of paper, forgetting to hand in things to the parents, and so and so we need to find alternative ways of getting that information to the parents, to the children: email, text, voicemail, Twitter, etc. Now, as a scout leader in my spare time, that's a laugh, in its spare time. As a scout leader, what I find is, or I used to find, it's changed now, that if I didn't have Facebook, which I don't, I have it professionally, but I don't have it personally, that I couldn't find out what was going on in my own group, that I was one of the leaders. And that caused me a lot of problems, obviously. And so I would speak to them and say, look, I don't know what's going on because I don't have Facebook. And the response, well, you need to get yourself Facebook. I don't want this attitude. I want people to be dealing with the adults, of the parents of the children, in a responsible way, and saying, how's the best way for me to get that information for you? Would an email be helpful for you? Should I text you? Would you want me to drop you a voicemail? Would you like a direct message on Twitter? Do it in a way that helps that family and deliver it to meet their needs. It's not for you, it's for them. Excuse me, it's getting close to lunchtime. I don't know what time it is where you're watching this, but for me it's close to lunchtime. Losing stuff, disorganised, losing lists, messages home, emails and texts, and one of the crucial pieces of equipment that I always recommend is we need a homeschool diary. That homeschool diary, if we can get the parents involved with that, they can have a cue for discussion at the end of the school day, help prepare the next day for the child. So lots and lots of good ideas there. So here we have another activity for you, and this activity is a video. It's another video, again quite a short video. It's called Fixers, and it's a dyspraxia story, and again it's from YouTube. This is a young woman, a teenage woman with dyspraxia, and she's going to talk about her dyspraxia. Now, the reason I've chosen this one is because it is very much in stark contrast to the other YouTube video that you saw earlier. So I hope you enjoy this, and if you've not got it now, you can't get hold of it, please be in touch with me. it's no trouble for me to get it over to you. In fact, you might even be able to type what it says in there and get it up on your YouTube yourself, but it really is no bother for me to get it for you. So please enjoy the video. Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the film there. I know I did. It's quite a moving film in places. So sharing information, I want to be doing lots and lots of visuals. If you want to get information across, write, draw, photograph, show, give them something tangible to take away. When I do social stories training, I do say to people, you know, I do get this, I've probably told you this before, where people, I say, how have you got on with the social stories? Oh, I didn't get around to doing them, I've been busy, but I did tell him, sorry, not good enough. The whole point of social stories, visual stories, is that they are visual. So you don't tell him, you show him. Worksheets, if you're using worksheets, I recommend worksheets. I like worksheets because they minimize the need for doing extraneous activities. So for example, you haven't got to write a great long piece of information. You just need to give the information to show that you have the knowledge of the lesson or whatever you've been taught or the research you've been doing. So consider what we're assessing. Are we assessing a great long piece of work, or are we assessing you know, just the key information? And I would say most of the time you're probably just assessing the key information. Let the students do responses through choral responding. Choral responding is very, very useful. The times table rap and all those sorts of things, absolutely brilliant. We did go through a bit of a stage not too long ago where chanting and things like that were considered unfashionable. I think we're doing these things again. I think they're really helpful. Similarly, role play to act out key concepts, absolutely fantastic. You know, it's a very much a doing activity. And when we go back to the word dyspraxia, praxia being doing, difficulty doing, we give them all practice doing, so that they're you know, they're getting them opportunities to try these things out. Keep information short. When giving an instruction, be concise. Instead of before you wash your hands for lunch, tidy up your desk, try tidy up your desk. Then wash your hands. Visual timetables again can be really useful for that. If you've got children, you might know that if you send your children upstairs to do all these activities like brush teeth, comb your hair, clean pants, clean socks, put your shirt on, it's not going to happen. And quite often you're better off to say, go upstairs, brush your teeth. When they come back, send them to do something else. Poor auditory processing. Sometimes they've just processed one instruction while the next is being given. Again, for difficulty with attention, you know, this is gonna cause problems, and it is going to actually have an impact on their motor planning skills, because they're busy planning one thing and you've just thrown another thing at them. So it's slowly. In group work, difficulty listening and focusing on individual voices, and then you know, so it's all just one big blur. Sensitivity to noise, light, temperature, short attention span, and then you know what, you know, most children, they'll get to that point and they'll just go, not doing this, I'm going to opt out of this. PE, difficulty with spatial organisation. PE is a difficult one, as I've discussed earlier. Getting change for PE is even more difficult, and we've discussed this earlier, but it's certainly one to watch. You know, what can we do to make PE, make getting change for PE easier? I've given you some ideas, but you know, the two big ones are getting tangled up in your clothes and losing kit. And if we can help with those, that's great. I'm going to I'm going to tell you about a learning support assistant that used to work for me in my class when I was a teacher, and she used to, her daughter was the only child in the class that never ever lost her cardigan, and that's because her mother had sewed a great big horse's head kind of motif onto the cardigan. That's great, you know. Whether you get past it with school uniform rules, I don't know, but my golly, it worked. Avoid complicated sequential instructions in PE. keep an eye out for avoidance strategies. Also, something worth saying is if you are walking in and out of the lines of kids, if there's, and giving instructions, can they hear you? And then really important, really big one for me, that we have to plan for children's confidence. We have to plan for children's self-esteem. And please, I don't see it too often. It does still happen. I don't want to see that team picking thing and last. I don't want to see the fittest, hunkiest, strongest, most amazing at PE kid always being the team captain, picking teams, and then getting to that last child who's, getting probably quite fed up with that. Oh, not sure what happened there. That's the same screen twice, which shouldn't be, because I went through these very, very thoroughly this morning. So other things you can do. I told you about swimming. I told you about running. I even told you about martial arts, which I think are very good for young people. Twirling, tubes and ribbons can be really good. Parachute games, crawling on assault courses can be great. Standing, kneeling, lying down, going big to small, small to big, musical games, hoops, all brilliant, all useful, all worth doing. And these non-competitive sports. Take some time to look at listening skills with the attention difficulties that are there. Listening skills can be difficult. Doesn't mean we're not going to do them though. So rhymes and songs, missing out words, heads, shoulders, knees and toes, and then we're missing out knees and we're missing out toes and stuff like that. Really good fun. Repetitive stories, clapping games, bingo, Simon Says, absolutely great. Also, on the subject of Simon, just occurred to me, there used to be a game called Simon, I don't know what it's called now. It used to have 4 coloured squares, and you would be following sequences with them, that sort of thing. Really good for listening and watching skills. Let those children fiddle, let them play. So I've got my little feelie bag here and some of my favourite feelies in here. This is a Transformers style fidget cube. This is a really good nuts and bolts thing. I have a gentleman comes to the Sutton workshops who really likes that. How you doing, Damo? Bit of a fiddly here. Let them if it helps them. Or should you? Well, here's the thing. If you find that they're losing attention by doing this, maybe not. But in most cases, I would say, yes, let them. Some hand exercises that you can do. Excuse me. We want to be looking at some of those because we have issues with the coordination, isolation of fingers to click buttons, delayed responses, so they're holding buttons down too long. I'm going to do that now. Yeah, it's not helping, is it? So, although this is quite unresponsive, as you can see. So that sort of thing that you can do. Hang on. So I've messed myself up here, haven't I? Delayed responses, poor control the extent of movements. So you're going to take something, but you go too far. So some things you can do, gripping thumbs in a loop and pulling apart, pushing, praying hands, hands under the thighs on your chair and lifting yourself up. A dent on this chair. This chair is very flimsy and it will collapse. I am not, most definitely not, doing my 90 degrees here. Raisins with thumb and forefinger, alternatively and together. Roll a pencil up and down. So if we get to my, where's my box of Get a Grip? Here it is. Lovely, lovely you. So my Get a Grip box. So gosh, I'm getting into a right tiz here. This is very accurate to the workshops that I deliver, by the way. I do get into quite a lot of tizzing. Right, rolling a pencil up and down your hand with a thumb. You can see that, quite difficult. Also this can be quite a good one. Tricky for me because I've got a ring on, although the tapping noise is quite pleasant. Yo-yo, cat's cradle, French knitting, anything really. anything that gets their fingers going and their hands going. And what you're actually doing is you're exercising the brain to have more control over those movements. Don't forget the blue tack. Big lover of the blue tack. Also sensory putty. What's that putty called again? There's squidgy putty that
I can't remember.
I can't remember. No, but you'll know. You'll know better than me.
Putty.
Pardon?
Therapy putty.
Therapy putty. Who knew? Therapy putty. It's for therapy. Thank you. Here's some really good ones. Sensory circles. So what I've got here. So I'm going to put my lap tray down again. I've got my sensory circles that you can have a play. Imagine how great this is for your fingers. It's going to get big here. Okay. I don't know if you can see that, but it's really quite impressive. They're at their best first thing in the morning, these, especially on a cold day, because if you've left them in your car overnight, they get a bit static, and the children really love to get them moving. So you can see, possibly you can see that the egg shapes are up at the top there, and we need to get them moving, and they're really very, very good, really good. I've got quite a few of these here and I quite enjoy them. And then if you're feeling like being big, boom, where's Andrew's head gone? These are quite good. Now what you can do with these, is this coming up on the screen?
Yeah.
You should be able to, yeah, move it about. Look at that. And I would get children on the floor doing this with their hands and moving it about. Yeah, just getting a little bit more responsive now. Look. Quite good. Let's try another colour. I love these. They're actually supposed to be danced on with feet, but I do like using these as a hands-on resource, and it makes me think of a colleague of mine, Zoe, who works at a school local to me, who I think was quite surprised when I got these out. She came on a Dyspraxia course and she thought, oh yeah, these are for dancing on. Well, we did a little bit of dancing on them. Look at that. Look at that. That's fantastic. Am I having fun? Yes, I'm having fun. Are you getting this all right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Look at that. Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm definitely having fun here. So, where's my lap tray? Put the sensory circles away, Andrew, before you go a bit wild. Bringing objects in to talk about from home, which helps set the context for more others. So, bringing a conker if they've been for a walk, swimming goggles, a photo, something like that, so that we can get that homeschool conversation going. Big fan of that. Get them to bring in their special interests, something from home they want to talk about. This is great. It keeps it interesting. It's good for self-esteem, and these kids need this. Okay, let's look at another activity. Here's a fantastic activity. This is what I want you to do. You've got a DT project, everyone's worst nightmare, right? And I say that I'm so bad at this. Those ones that you have to do with your kids at home, I don't think I've ever successfully made anything. I'm just going to ask my son, did we ever do anything good?
No.
No. Okay. And you turned out all right. You're a good grown-up. You're starting a DT project which requires the child to hunt down some resources at home, bring them to school and manage them at school. How can you help that for the child with dyspraxia? There's your activity for you. So have a little think about that, and then when you've come up with some strategies, and then I'll give you 5 of my strategies when we get to the end of this. So enjoy yourself. I'll speak to you in a moment. Right. Okay, welcome back. So, how can you make this easier for the child with dyspraxia? 5 ideas that I came up with was get a bag or sack that looks different to other things that you've seen. So if they're bringing stuff in a bin bag, it's likely to get lost with everyone else's bin bags. But if you happen to have a pink bin bag or a green bin bag, that might be a little bit more helpful, number one. Number two, make sure it's labelled. Make sure it's labelled and everything inside it is labelled. Number three, bring it in with the child, hand it directly to the teacher, get the teacher to show you where it's going to be kept. That's number three. Number four, for teacher, try to get it away from all the other people's resources, so in a special place, so they can go to it and they can find it easier. Number five, help that child pack those resources away into their own bag, so actually work with them. I bet we could come up with another 10 or 20 if we were doing that. Taking the stress out of things, that's what we're looking to do. I want to do a few bits on transition from primary to secondary, not a huge amount. I do workshops on this, but things you need to know: sample timetables, maps, visits, meeting tutors. What do people look like? Yeah, we need to make sure children can find their way around these places. There are some key issues in going into secondary school. For example, poor coordination, writing essays, undressing for sporting activities, playing team games, social interactions, keeping friends, making friends, understanding the rules, not being easily led, and possibly most important and often related to their dyspraxia is poor previous experience and being bullied, and not just by the pupils. Sadly, I do see cases of children who are being bullied by their teacher. It does happen, and it's very difficult to deal with. Things they're going to need to learn about: how to navigate around the school, getting assignments in on time, revising and managing projects, revising and doing examinations, planning things for after school clubs, after school activities, responding to feedback when things haven't gone quite so well, the dreaded options, considering the longer term goals, which is quite a difficult thing. I'm not sure I knew what I wanted to do for a long time, and choosing not to do dangerous behaviours. They have so much more autonomy at secondary school that dangerous things can happen. I want to give you some motor skills strategies. I'm going to talk you through these. Forgive me, it might get a bit chalky-talky, but what I will say is go through these in your own time, have a little look at these, and see where you can go with them. 10 minutes a day is good for anybody. Brain gym, star jumps, hopscotch, Simon says, with very specific instructions. Start with big activities: hips, shoulders, tummy, throwing a scarf or something to each other, drawing letters on the back and guessing what that letter is. You've got also some spatial awareness activities, because people with dyspraxia, they may invade your space. This is also happens a lot in ADHD. So you might put down a couple of hoops on the floor. You can both stand in the hoop. If you want to be close to that person, you can go to the closer edge to them in the hoop, but they can move back. So it's a coordination conversation, if you like. Sitting in front of a mirror side by side and identifying, outline the index finger, all the parts of the body. Stand with the child in the middle of the room and indicate by pointing certain features of the room, and then you might get them to turn around and do the same thing but from a different position. Imitated hand and feet movements, clapping hands, right hand to left shoulder, etc. Repeat with ears, nose, elbows. Draw around the body, label, outline, all those sorts of things around the body's shape. Sequencing daily life, so child, name the people around the table, scanning from left to right, then maybe do it from right to left. Name cards of each item of clothing, and describe the movements required to dress. That's really hard. I can't do that. How do you put a shirt on? Okay, I unfold the shirt, I put my right arm in the right sleeve, I pull the rest of the shirt around my back. It's hard. Great for speech and language, but great for coordination. And what you do find is they're doing it while they're talking about it. What do you do when you wash your hands, brush your teeth, lay the table, etc.? This is physically, verbally discussing that. Practice days of the week, months, seasons, etc. Counting activities 1 to 20. Repeated name, address, phone number. Marching in time to rhythm with your arms and legs coordinated. And listening to noises. This is great. Get them close their eyes and you listen to a noise. Listen to a clicking sound, listen to keys rattling, fingers tapping. Ask them to describe what they've heard. A few more and then we'll be moving on. Hands and feet movements, clapping, right hand to shoulder. Oh no, we've just done that. Sorry. Plan the week. This is about your time management. Plan the week using your visual timetables. Give plenty of notice for changes in routine. Something you can do that's very helpful is give them 10 minutes before their next activity using timers. 10 minutes for reading, if they've got 10 minutes for reading. These are just great. These are so great and the cheapest chips. And as we discussed earlier, different coloured covers for different subjects. Have a see-through pencil case. This is my very own pencil case. This is the one I take scouting because it's got all the sorts of bits and bobs that I want in my scouting trip there. But I can see the stuff in there before I have to take it out of the packet. So instead of rummaging around, it's all there for me. Remember posture. Remember experimenting with pens and pencils. Colour code green, start, red, finish. This is for activities. To test writing, talk to them, get them to write and then read it back. Never place a left-handed child beside a right-handed child, except for in exceptional circumstances. I think that's exceptional enough, don't you? And within maths, just to remind you, we want concrete resources, colour coding, hundreds, tens and ones. So instead of having 100 blocks to represent 100, 100 could be one brown block, 10 could be one red block, 1 could be one yellow block. Time concepts, walk into the shop, walk to the shop, see if you can guess how long it takes, and then walking back from the shop, time it to see if you're right. And then we can do that with timers for different lengths of time there. Here's some really good maths resources. We want to be using concrete resources. I'm putting them up there just to remind you. Beads are really helpful, that sort of thing. And you have a directed task. And your directed task for today is to watch all 3 videos in the presentation. That should take you around about 15 minutes. Thank you very much for listening today. I'm really pleased that you've been along to this, and hopefully you'll make it to one of the other workshops.